Whispers Around the World, a Heal Our World book from SufferingWell. Chapter 10, Unexpected Encouragement. Over the next few weeks, the How group continued meeting regularly on Zoom, each session bringing them closer. What started as tentative updates on their countries and prayers was transforming into something deeper, a safe space where they could share both faith and life. One snowy afternoon, as they gathered for another call, Yuri felt a pulsing excitement. Today, she'd invited Paulette, a tiny but spirited woman who was known around the parish for her way with children and her uncanny ability to speak just the right words when someone needed encouragement. Yuri sensed that Paulette would add a beautiful energy to the group, and she couldn't wait to see how everyone would react to her joining. As the call began, each square on the screen filled up. Patricia and Audrey were bundled up in matching scarves, with Abby dozing peacefully behind them. Ken, with his shelf of cereal boxes in the background, gave a cheery wave. Then Ronald appeared, looking relaxed, even smiling as he held Penny close to his side. Beth Ann had become comfortable with the group, sitting on her sofa with Mabel. Yuri noticed a new square pop up and saw Paulette's face, looking slightly uncertain but smiling kindly. Her screen wobbled a bit as she adjusted it, and they could see the soft gray of her hair and the sparkle in her eyes. "Hello, everyone," Paulette said, waving. "I hope I didn't miss anything." "Not at all, Paulette," Yuri replied, introducing her to the group. "Everyone, this is Paulette. She's joining us today and hopefully will become a regular." The group greeted her happily, and Paulette's smile grew wider as she looked at each face. "Well, I'm glad to be here. Yuri told me about your group, and it sounds like exactly the kind of thing we need in times like these." Ken leaned in, grinning. "You're in for quite a ride with this bunch. Between the pets, the grandkids, and our prayer requests, it's always an adventure." They all laughed, and Paulette nodded, her eyes twinkling. "Sounds like my kind of people." They opened with prayer as usual, and then Yuri invited Paulette to share a bit about herself. Paulette spoke with quiet enthusiasm, telling them about her love for sharing stories with children after Mass and how much she enjoyed talking about saints. "It's amazing," she said, "how children absorb these stories of faith, how they find inspiration in the lives of saints. It's a privilege to be part of that." "I'll bet the parents appreciate the time to fellowship," Patty offered. "Yes, I suppose they do," Paulette agreed. The group listened intently, each of them visibly touched by Paulette's words. Patricia spoke up. "I think that's beautiful, Paulette. I know we're all adults here, but maybe you could tell us a story or two about the saints sometimes. It would remind us to keep our faith simple like children." Paulette nodded. "I'd be happy to. And I'd love to hear about your chosen countries. Yuri mentioned that you've all picked a place to focus your prayers on. Would anyone like to share?" Patricia spoke first, recounting a recent news article she'd read about Greece and the ongoing struggles there. She talked about the historical sites she'd seen in photos, adding, "It's strange to think that a place with such a rich past is facing so many modern challenges. It reminds me of how much the world changes and how we need God's help to weather it." Paulette listened thoughtfully, her gaze intent. "That's a beautiful observation, Patricia. It reminds me of St. Paul, who preached in Greece. The people there have known faith, and perhaps God will strengthen them again through your prayers." As they continued, each person shared updates about their chosen countries. When it was Ken's turn, he leaned forward, a mischievous glint in his eye. "I'll tell you, I never thought Mongolia would keep me so busy. I learned that they have these festivals where they race camels and do archery. Makes me want to go visit someday. Just imagine racing camels in the middle of a desert." The group laughed, and Paulette clapped her hands. "Well, Ken, if you ever go, you must bring us all back stories." They continued with the meeting, discussing updates and sharing prayers, and Paulette quickly found her place among them. As the conversation wound down, Paulette cleared her throat, looking as though something was on her mind. "I don't know if this is the right time," she began, glancing at Yuri, "but I wanted to ask if you might all pray for someone I know. There's a young family in the parish. They're struggling to make ends meet, and I know the holidays were hard for them." Ronald nodded, his face softening. "Of course, Paulette. We're here to pray for each other as well. Thank you for sharing that." Paulette's voice grew softer. "I'd also like to offer a little encouragement to each of you, if I may. Sometimes I find that God gives me just the right words, and I'd like to share them." The group listened, their eyes fixed on her as she went around offering specific words to each of them. She told Patricia and Audrey how their creativity was a gift that brought light to others. To Ronald, she spoke of patience and perseverance, reassuring him that his prayers were heard. For Patty, she reminded her that even the smallest acts of kindness made ripples that reached beyond what she could see. Each word seemed to land exactly where it was needed, and by the time she finished, there wasn't a dry eye on the call. "Thank you, Paulette," Yuri said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've brought such grace to us today. I think we all needed to hear those words." Beth Ann had found herself listening intently, surprised at how much this all resonated with her, stirring old memories she thought she'd let go of. The group lingered on the call a bit longer, talking about the unexpected ways God worked through their lives. As they finally began to log off, Yuri watched each of them disappear one by one, her heart full. Paulette was the last to go, giving a small wave. "Thank you for letting me join. I'm looking forward to what God has in store for all of us." When the call ended, Yuri sat back, closing her eyes. She thought about Paulette's kindly words, the way they'd drawn everyone a little closer, reminding them of the beauty in each of their lives. This journey, she realized, wasn't just about praying for the world. It was about learning to see God in one another and in themselves. Yuri whispered a prayer of thanks. She felt a sense of peace settle over her, a quiet assurance that they were exactly where they needed to be. From Bill to How Group, Ray, Bible Study, Forgiveness and Reconciliation. Scripture focus, Matthew 6, verse 12 and 14 through 15. Theme, Forgiving Others as We Are Forgiven. 1. Introduction. Read Matthew chapter 6, verses 12 and 14 to 15, where Jesus teaches us to forgive others as we seek forgiveness from God. Reflect on the power of forgiveness in our relationships, especially within families and close friendships. Think or write about the importance of releasing hurt and resentment as a way to invite God's healing. 2. Questions for reflection. What are the challenges of forgiving others, especially when the pain is deep? How does forgiveness bring healing to our own hearts? Is there someone in your life you need to forgive? How can you begin that process? 3. Application. Reflect on someone you may need to forgive, whether it's a small grievance or a significant hurt. Spend time in quiet prayer, asking for God's help to release bitterness and to foster reconciliation. End with a prayer for strength and grace to forgive, even when it's difficult. Weeks later, after attending Mass a few more times, Beth Ann found herself lingering near the confessional, her heart pounding. She hadn't been to confession in years, and the thought of it brought a wave of unease. "Maybe next time," she whispered to herself, but her feet didn't move. Instead, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath, silently asking God for the courage to take this step. She stood there, unmoving, praying for strength. In that moment, she knew she was getting closer, slowly shedding the fears and regrets that had held her back for so long.